I was not experiencing any separation. Everything was completely one, and I was in these moments. How should I say this? The ultimate I am. I don't want to say the one, but in a way, I feel like for a moment I was as God, as the Great Spirit, or whatever term you want to use to express this singular divine source of consciousness. I think this is a very profound and important year. This is, I mean, you can just look at the events taking place. I mean, all over the world, and certainly here in the U.S., there's definitely events taking place that are going to just shape the future. I think in very profound ways for generations to come. Hello, my name is Rex. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you for everyone who's here, who's willing to take their time to hear my story and let me speak from my heart. I'm a near-death experiencer, of course. My near-death experience happened in 2011. A lot has happened since then. I've become a musician. I'm a composer, producer. I'm an author of a book called My Experiment with Gravity. I kept an open mind to spirituality as I got older. And so I would say, and by the time the near-death experience happened, I had become a spiritual person. I wouldn't say that I had any idea or thought about things the way that I do now. Never imagined in my entire lifetime that something like that could have happened to me, and the shifts in the transitions, and just the whole just incredible like awakening that's taken place. I just never imagined. So while there was a spirituality about my life prior to the NDE, and I think at that time I was becoming more conscious. I was working to grow and expand myself, but nothing like what has happened since the near-death experience. Medically speaking, my near-death experience is the result of a 26-foot fall, or right around 8 meters, depending on what part of the world you are watching this. And I landed headfirst on a concrete bike path. There's a park that I used to run in by the house I was living at the time, and I went by a tree that I climbed dozens of times, and thought, hey, why don't I just go for a climb? And a couple of branches let go. Had a branch I was going across that I had stepped on, it broke, and I went down, and I went to try to grab a second branch to keep from falling, and it broke. And from there, I basically went straight down to the bike path. And according to the police reports, the first responder reports, and witnesses that saw the fall, I hit the concrete head first. So I had a massive brain trauma, massive bleeding on the brain. I broke 20 bones in the fall, was in a coma for 5 days. I had pneumonia. I mean, anything that could have gone wrong basically did. So I crashed multiple times in those first couple of days I was in the coma. It was bad enough that my doctors and medical professionals at the time weren't sure I was even going to make it. They were surprised that I even made it to the first night. Somehow I survived, but like I say, about 5 days later, I slowly started coming out of the coma. Now, for me, when coming out of the coma wasn't like what you see in the movies or on TV, where somebody's been in a coma for a while and all of a sudden their eyes open, they wake up and they're like, oh, where am I? What's going on? Oh, it's good to be back. It took me a while for my brain to like come back online. Even after I woke up from the coma, it took another, I think, week, like maybe a week and a half before I even realized I was in a hospital, and really came to finally start to understand that something that I had fallen and I had really messed myself up. So I even have memories of being confused about where I was and being frustrated that I was being kept against my will, and I wanted to go home when I couldn't. And it was a whole thing to where, even today, I sometimes, and you might even notice this in the interview, sometimes I can jump around a little bit because sometimes it's hard for me to keep focus on single trains of thought. Part of that is just because one of the results of the near-death experience, the more experiential spiritual part of it, is that I have a hard time grounding in this reality now. So it's not like, I'm blanking out necessarily. I just have a tendency to want to travel elsewhere, if that makes sense. The kind of the whole soul travel concept of, people call it astral travel or what have you. I call it, I guess, a soul travel, which is part of a practice called Ekankar. I'm not an expert in that field, but that's where the term soul travel comes from, at least as far as where I learned from it, or where I learned it from. But I also call it thought travel, because in this realm, it really is like movement at the speed of thought. So But yeah, getting back to the medical aspect of it, it's a miracle that I even survived. And something my brother was told, as I was coming out of the coma, is that even if I do recover from this, there's a really good chance, given the amount of pressure and blood that was in my brain. I mean, it was apparently really bad. I might come out of it as a vegetable or severely mentally handicapped. I definitely has my issues. I have certain things that I was able to do prior to the near-death experience that I can't do anymore. I cannot multitask. I was a great multitasker from before. Unless I'm doing something that really draws my attention, I can have a hard time focusing. My memory definitely is not what it used to be, unless I can visualize it. I get migraine headaches and really nasty migraines. I do have energy issues. That's from the traumatic brain injury. And I still, it's been 13 years, but I'm still dealing with a lot of the side effects of that. Even though I've improved over these years, I've definitely found myself, making progress, but there's definitely still some significant issues. However, the flip side of that all is I came out of this with my visual acuity somehow just completely off the hook. I've always been a fairly visually minded person, but now I am incredibly visual. The way I am able to visualize within my mind again is at a level of which like I never imagined I would ever be able to do. So as a result, I now have an understanding of the nature of existence like I never have. Not to say I didn't have ideas before, but it was nothing like this. I have ideas about the nature of existence. I have ideas about like cosmology and quantum theory. I have ideas about what gravity might really be, kind of an extension to Einstein's relativity. And if there's any chance that I'm on the right path, there's a possibility that I'm also explaining dark energy, getting into gravity on the scale of a multiverse, not just what we think of as a universe, but on the multiverse, which has been a part of theoretical physics for some time now. I'm not a physicist, mind you. I'm into the conceptual side of it. And then also, in explaining all of that, also gravity's relationship to what's called the unified field if you're into quantum theory. Another thing that's come out of this, because of my visual acuity, and this happened completely by accident, is that I discovered that I can write and produce music. And my discovery that I could write music happened completely accidentally. I joke all the time. My first piece of music is my accidental piece of music, because when I wrote the piece of music, I had no idea that I was about to write a piece of music. I wasn't planning on it. I wasn't thinking about it. It never occurred to me that I had this ability. And just literally over the course of one weekend, I went from just trying to do some basic thing. It's on a piece of software called Ableton, just because I was barely even just learning the software at the time. And another thing that I have a difficulty with is technology. I just can't. I had a great understanding of technology before. I wasn't a computer wizard or anything, but I was good on computers, good with technology. It came relatively easily for me, and now it's very challenging for me. So trying to just learn a piece of software that's very complex and very deep, and without meaning to, without realizing it, I went from just, like I said, trying to just write maybe a basic beat and create a simple tone out of just some instruments I was just exploring through, because I didn't even really know what was in the instrument library in this thing and the kind of sounds and whatnot I could make. And somehow, some way, just layer by layer, piece by piece, next thing I know, a couple of days later, I've got an entire piece of music that I had just completely written. And I was completely blown away that I did this. And of course, I had a good cry, because I just blew my mind that me, how does this happen to me? And then I just all of a sudden heard so much music in my mind that I'm like, I'm going to write so much stuff. And that happened about 6 years ago. Going on 6 years ago. And since then, I've got over 50 pieces of music that I've written. I don't have any music training. I've been a DJ my whole life. I've been a nightclub and event DJ. I've DJed lots and lots of clubs, lots and lots of events going back to when I was 16 years old. So I can mix music and I can make people dance, but that's not the same as writing and producing. Hey, much respect to all the DJs of the world. I mean, that's its own kind of skill and its own kind of artistry. But writing and producing, even though it's still music, is a very different side of that. So I don't have, like, other than high school choir, which I don't think really applies to say, being able to write pieces of music many years later. I don't have music training. I don't even know what key any of my music in is in. I literally visualize music in my mind, I get on this software called Ableton, like I mentioned, and I take what's in my mind and I make it on Ableton. And because after I made the piece of music, I decided, you know what? Now I've got to make it sound good, which means I need to learn how to mix and master the music. And mostly, I had some help along the way, but mostly on my own. I taught myself how to produce. I am not an engineer, mind you. Okay, I can't explain things the way an audio engineer can explain things, but I do have a way to visualize all the different aspects of music production. And I can't explain all of it. It's just going to be done in metaphors and analogies rather than sounding like an engineer. That makes sense. So, that's been a big part of the shifts that have come in my life. Same with like writing the book. I had no idea that I would ever write a book in my life. I wrote a book, and I've got more books that I have coming. So much of my life shifted since the near-death experience. In some ways, it's been frustrating and difficult, and even tragic and traumatic at times, but also in some ways, in just in beautiful ways. It's been truly beautiful, truly miraculous, and it's it's kind of as a friend of mine, term a friend of mine coined was blur. So it's kind of both blessing and curse. So it's been difficult on the one hand, and still is, but on the other hand, it's also been amazing and mind-blowing and completely life-altering. For me, food even tastes, everything is different. Very little. There's some things from my past life that are still part of my life, like martial arts. I've been doing martial arts for well over 30 years, and that is still very much a part of my life. Although no more fighting, I don't spar, don't grapple, I don't do any of that kind of stuff anymore. I just do the flexibility, the core training, the movements, the applications. That stuff I still do. I will always do that. Plus, I have a handful of students. So I'm an instructor, and I do teach a few people. And I still train under my amazing, wonderful master I described earlier in the video. But like I said, food tastes different. Everything is different. Like even the way my thoughts work are differently. My sensitivities are different. I've always been kind of a sensitive person. I've always been somewhat empathic. Now my sensitivities and my empathy are just unreal, at least for me. I've never been, again, I can't compare to, there's a lot of empaths and sensitives in the world out there, intuitives. So I'm not trying to compare, one person to another, because we're all unique. But in my own experience, I've never imagined being anything like this. I can be in a grocery store, and I'm sure, I'm going to guess grocery stores around the world, a lot of times they've got music playing, and at least grocery stores, here, you can go through the store, they've got a little bit of music kind of playing in the background while you're walking around the store doing your shopping. And if some goofy love song comes on, I can literally start tearing up right there in the middle of a store, because my emotions just kind of get going, and I start feeling and emoting with this cheesy love song. Just I have a certain guilty pleasure for love songs. But it's just, some people might call it cheesy, which is why I kind of joke that way about it. But seriously, I've just got this crazy sensitivity now. I can get emotional we've all seen lots and lots of sunsets, but I love, one of the things I love about Colorado, these Rocky Mountains are really beautiful. The sunset over the Rockies is just unreal. And on any given day, I can be out there watching the sunset and still just get emotional, even get teary-eyed over just how much it just affects me, and thinking about the connection to Mother Earth, and connection to the mountains, and to the land, to the sky, and of course, once it becomes nightfall, to the stars beyond. And I really feel this with such a deep and powerful passion. And again, I've always had an appreciation for such things, but now, like I said, like I never imagined I could feel it. It's just with such a depth, such a divinity, such a spirituality, with such an incredible space of love. That's the best way to describe it. It's just love. And that's one thing that's also shifted for me, is learning about forgiveness. And also really, I've always been, I'd like to think I was, like a lot of people, I've done my things in the past. I've got my dark spaces in my past life, but I think I've basically been a loving person. But since the NDE, I'm feeling love in a way, again, like I've never felt it before. And so I approach literally everything in my life with a loving mindset. even if it's just going to the gas station and getting gas in the car and exchanging money with the clerk at the gas station. And even that moment, I will approach it in a loving way, just in terms of just simply being authentic. And even if the conversation is very brief, just always showing thanks and always showing gratitude, even for the most simple and basic things in life. Never mind those relationships and those experiences, which are a little bit more profound in our lives. So yeah, there's that life-changing element from the near-death experience, going back to the NDE itself, and just a little bit of a synopsis of just how much my life has changed, and even 13 years on, still changing, still growing, still emerging, still evolving. And it's so much so that I oftentimes will joke to people. My birthday is actually coming up on Halloween, October 31st, and that's my actual birthday. But I joke that my second birthday is on April 10th, which is the day that I fell in 2011. It was April 10th, 2011. So I oftentimes will joke that my second birthday is April 10th because I went into this near-death experience at 44 years of life being a certain way this entire time, and being very acclimated and very, comfortable in who I was at that point in time. And coming back so completely different with so many things about me, right down to the most internal levels of my thought processes, even the way my body works, the way everything just happens now, to where I feel like I'm only 13 years into this new paradigm of reality. And as such, I joke that I'm only 13 years old because in a lot of ways, I do have my 57 years of life experience, but only 13 years in this new paradigm, in which I feel like in a lot of ways I've had to relearn everything. I've essentially reinvented myself, reinventing my life, and learning how to apply and live with this new version of me. Imagine the expanse of the entire universe, whatever it may really be, all at once. And imagine past, present, and future all at once. Now also imagine multiple realities, parallel universes, probabilities and possibilities for experience. Well, imagine the experience being in a state of both potential and kinetic, meaning in motion, all at once. With that, imagine infinite dimensions, all at once. So for a moment, I was the all of everything. I was not experiencing any separation. Everything was completely one, and I was in these moments. How should I say this? The ultimate I am. I don't want to say the one, but in a way, I feel like for a moment I was as God, as the Great Spirit, or whatever term you want to use to express this singular divine source of consciousness. This is what I was for a moment. And in this space, and I say it like this also because I was not experiencing love per se, because I was love. I was not alive, as we might think of it, because I was life itself. I was the essence of life itself. I was not a collection of thoughts, but rather the thought, the mind, the imagination that gives rise to creation itself. So in that, sometimes I'm asked, did you experience, like my mother passed away back in 1988. Did you experience, your mother, having, because you were so close? Did you experience angels? Did you experience other beings? Did you, what, and my answer to that is, in a way, no, because it wasn't necessarily directly experienced that way, but at the same time, yes, because it was all encompassing, all embodying. It was all there, all a part of it. I felt every single bit of it all at once. And having come back from that, one of the results, because it's not like I went there, came back, and it went away. That's still, well, you might say that the lights went on, the veil got lifted, or what have you, and it's still that way. I'm still experiencing and existing in that space. And because of that, now the human part of me going through this chronological arrow of time that we're all experiencing here now has experiences. My mother, and I've always felt my mother, and even though I wasn't thinking of myself as a terribly spiritual person going back to when my mother died, I've always felt my mother, and I had a really amazing, profound experience with her coming to me in my dream right after she died. So I do have examples of spirituality and connections even pre-NDE, but since the NDE, those kinds of experiences have become completely commonplace. I have relationships with different beings, conscious beings from different, not just here on Earth, but different forms of conscious experience. Call it cross-dimensional, interdimensional experiences, interdimensional beings. Maybe they're extraterrestrials, depending on how you want to define that. I have, and I know it sounds crazy, and I know this is going out to a podcast a lot of people are going to see, but I say it because I think most of the people watching this will understand what I'm saying, rather than just thinking, oh, this guy is crazy. I need to put this guy on some meds or something. Something's wrong about this guy. But no. It's just something that I realize it's a very natural and inherent part of all of us. Yes, it's a gift that I've been able to wake up to this, but one of the messages that I have for everybody is you don't need a near-death experience to have access to this. This is already inherent within and around all of us all the time, just by the nature of our very existence and our very being right now. If you have a loved one that you want to reach out to and connect with, you can do that anytime you want to. And no, you're not taking them away from anything, because if they're in this space of being, they are simply being in that love and in that spirit and in that divine mind. And because of that, they're not relegated to just one thing at a time, one moment at a time. In that context, say like an angel being, sometimes you might think about, well, I'm communicating with an angel. What about somebody else might be communicating with that same angel? Well, these types of beings can exist in what they refer to in quantum theory is in superposition, meaning they can be in multiple places at the same time with respect to how we perceive reality. They're not relegated to just one person at a time, one moment at a time, because that's not how time is experienced or how time moves in these spiritual planes. I think this is a very profound and important year. You can just look at the events taking place. All over the world, and certainly here in the U.S., there's definitely events taking place that are going to just shape the future, I think, in very profound ways for generations to come. So I'm going to say yes to that, and I'm feeling that, and that resonates to me. That 2024 is a very powerful and profound year, where I think we're watching transitions and shifts happening all over the place, and I believe that, again, the more of us that are approaching that from a space of love, acceptance, caring, support, healing, the more we can ensure that this world continues to shift in positive ways, so we can create, basically what a term that I've always liked is a one world vision. I'm not talking like New World Order kind of stuff, because that's another matter and a whole other subject, but one world vision. And I agree, 2024 is a powerful time, and I understand, even religiously speaking, we're shifting ages. I think in terms of Hindu philosophy, and then I think even from the Mayan calendar perspective, we're shifting what's called Bactuns. I understand we're shifting into the age of Aquarius, of course. There's a lot of evidence, even in terms of religion and philosophy, that supports that this is a time of major shift and transition. And yes, so the actions, the events of this year, 2024, and I think over the next few years for sure, but certainly 2024, I think are profound in shaping the future and what's to come. A lot of it is just, and I don't want to dive into politics and that sort of thing, but the evidence is going on. Like America right now is in a very important election cycle, and it's a cycle that I think and this is just one place in the world, and just even that alone is a powerful evidence that we are at a fork in the road, where we could literally go from one extreme to another extreme depending on the outcome of that election. Outside of that, I think that among the things that I'm seeing, and as a near-death experiencer, having been a part of the near-death experience community and immersing myself more into spiritual communities, another piece of evidence would be that I feel like more and more people are waking up to the kinds of things that we're talking about right now. And again, you don't have to be a near-death experiencer to be able to understand this, to see this, to experience this. And I find that the more I talk about this, the more I share with people, be it through a podcast, through my books, through presentation, or just one-on-one, just relationships with friends, and even acquaintances I might run into, maybe out and about somewhere. I'm finding more and more people seem to truly be waking up and understanding that there's just so much more than just in who and what we are, and really coming into terms with the true oneness that is underlying for all of us, that true oneness in love, that true oneness in divine being. So that evidence for me, and again, sometimes I can be a little bit torn about this because I think, like a lot of people, I can be, I'm such an empath now that I can be very hurt by certain things that take place in the world, and sometimes things that take place in my life, as we all go through these kinds of heartbreaks. But more and more, I'm going to err towards the side of optimism, because it really does seem to me like more and more people are waking up to this kind of spirituality, this kind of messaging, this kind of idealism. And it seems to me that there's a certain consistency to that, no matter what religious background, whatever spiritual background somebody's coming from. I'm finding more and more people seem to be aligned and this understanding of what God may really be, what the source is, and living in the space of love, and understanding the natures of dualities, and discovering the place and the purpose, say, of the ego versus the unconscious part of our being and the spirit part of our being. So that is a big part of what gives me hope for a bright future, and that the earth, that life on earth, humanity, is shifting in a direction of love and openness and acceptance, and moving towards having that one world vision, so where we can live in a world that is without war, without hate, without this excessive materialism, where, everybody, every man, woman, and child is taken care of, and at least with the basic necessities, at least with the basics, because we have the resources to do that right now. It's all about allocation of resources, as those in economics might say. And obviously those allocation of resources are very imbalanced right now, because you've got the world's most wealthy people, the 0.1% or the 0.01 or the 0.1%, are in control of like 3/4 of the entire world's wealth. You literally have like 3,000 people that are in control of like more than half the world's wealth. So that is not the most equitable allocation of resources. So what I'm getting at is, we are in a time, well, where even it seems like resources are having shortages and things like that. The truth is, Mother Earth still has the capacity to take care of every man, woman, and child on this planet. And that is what I feel like more of us are waking up to this reality, however we choose to express it, then the closer we come to realizing that. Because we are, yes, of course, responsible for ourselves, but at the same time, I'm going to suggest that we are also responsible for each other. One thing I've learned about the future is that I'm very careful about trying to play forecaster for the future. I'm somebody that, because of the way my mind works now, I see possibilities. I see different timelines and how they can play out. And even though I can zero in on a singular timeline and say, well, if you stay this course, this is going to be the outcome, inevitably, given enough time. But at the same time, as I've also learned, that sometimes just talking about the future can change the outcome. So I'm going to be careful about trying to be the prognosticator, because the future is open. You can say whatever we want to say about what we feel like is coming, and maybe you'll be spot on. But I think if somebody who is spot on, because many people won't be, but for anybody that is, including me, it would be more of more by chance that you are, because right now we're looking at a wealth of possibilities and probabilities as we move forward. So, and I'm also an advocator of a term that I hear, and I think different people might define it differently, called quantum jumping. And so that basically suggests that whatever path you're on, whatever vibrational reality that you're experiencing right now, with certain shifts from within, certain shifts in your actions, the way you approach things, again, your feelings, your emotions, thought patterns, can literally shift that entire vibration to where you literally could be on one path. And this doesn't just go for the individual, but also on the world scale, where it can go from being on this one vibrational path, with those shifts could be on a completely different kind of a vibrational path. And so I'm careful to try to predict what's going to come. And I think I have ideas about that, but at the same time, I want to be careful sometimes too about predicting the most positive of outcomes, because I want to make sure that nothing, because if this is the inevitability. I want to make sure that everybody's doing their parts, because one thing, and you can, and even sometimes movies are made where they will even demonstrate this, where somebody knows the outcome of something and they're told, okay, well, you're in your future, I see you being very successful in this particular field. And so the person who's just been told this might take for granted that this is what's going to happen. So whatever steps they may have taken to achieve that, had they not been told this, they all of a sudden don't take those steps. Therefore, that outcome does not happen. Do you know what I'm saying? So because they were told about their future in advance, and they assumed that because they were told this future and it was supposed to be set, so they thought, they didn't take the steps, they didn't perform the actions necessary to support that outcome. Therefore, that outcome was not realized. So I want to be very careful about that, because I want to make sure that if the most beautiful and positive of outcomes is realized, that nobody, nobody takes a day off. Nobody takes the foot off the gas, if you will. That everybody still stays their course to ensure that the best of outcomes can take place.